Wheel, not getting anywhere new? Perhaps you've hit a plateau that has you asking, is this it? Have you accomplished all you've set out to do in life and are not feeling as fulfilled as you thought you would? It is normal at midlife to reassess what's working for you and what's not. It's also normal to want to reclaim your time, your energy, and your joy. Let's make the best out of the second half of our lives by having more fun, experiencing more peace, and feeling more joy. If any of this resonates with you, then this podcast is for you. I'm Megan Bayless Bartley. Now let's get ready to shift our shit. Hello and welcome back to another episode of our Shifting Our Shit podcast. We are excited to have Bridgette Allen here with us. Welcome, Bridgette.
Thank you. I'm excited about this as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So when Rob and I were doing these, he would start things off with if today was a something, what would today be? And I'm wondering if today was, I don't know, a song maybe. Do you have a favorite or a song that today would be? Maybe it's not a favorite song if today is not a great day, but anything comes to your mind?
In particular, I wouldn't, other than I would just say Walking on Sunshine.
Yeah.
That pops up quite a few days for me, thank goodness.
You know, I wondered about that because you are such a positive person. You're always, you always have a smile on your face, which I know, like, sometimes there's days where we don't really feel like smiling. I'm sure you have those days too, but
of course,
you're definitely in the therapist world. You who are a little bit more on the extroverted side, I think might be unique. So I like having you around because you're happy and you're chatty and you like to be around people. I think today for me, let's see, if today was a song, that's a good song, Walking on Sunshine. I don't know, something about Somewhere Over the Rainbow. What's that rainbow song? I don't know. With the
one that Kermit the Frog sang. I know someone before him, but obviously.
Yeah.
Or
Wizard of Oz from the Wizard of Oz. I don't know. That's just such a classic song. Like, it's just such a, like, hopeful in my world song. And yeah, today's just been like a classic kind of day. It's been a good day. So I'm glad to be here with you, chatting about you and where you're from and how you became a therapist. Share with us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Well, actually, it's funny that you just brought up the extroversion because I don't know if you were able to take a test, but I would be I'm extroverted with few people at a time.
Got it.
Well. Mm-hmm. So yes, but I will say, starting out, like I was born in Salmon, Idaho, so I'm far from Kentucky.
Yes.
Grew up there most of my years, and then the end of high school moved to Pocatello, but still in Idaho. Then ended up moving clear out here to Kentucky about 20 years ago. So,
wow.
Yeah, crazy. As far as growing up, I was very much, I actually am the kind of person who struggled in school because I couldn't keep my attention. I was one of those humans but I wanted to be the good student. So I would show up and I'd be like, today I will look at the board and I will make sure I remember everything that's on this board, this chalkboard. And it was only a few minutes later, I'd realize, oh no, I just looked outside again. And I'd look back at the board and it was completely full of information. I had no idea where it went. Yeah. But all that to say, I just grew up enjoying life in general. Mm-hmm. I loved people. I loved to dance. Mm-hmm. And I think it was in my high school years that I realized I was only going to get to meet a very small part of the population. Mm-hmm. And I was very sad by that, thinking, aww, I only get this many humans in my life. Like, mm-hmm, it seemed very limited. And it's interesting that I would pick this profession as time went on. I get to know so many people. And I absolutely love to be able to sit with them. Yes. Yeah. And let's see, was this your career of choice, like from the beginning, or you became a therapist a little bit later in life, right? Yes, I did. In fact, when I was growing up and when I started to go into college, like I could not keep my mindset on anything. And I was like, what is the issue here? I cannot study long enough. I had the desire, I just couldn't get there.
Wow.
And so I ended up just working retail and went into retail management for years. And
Yeah.
it actually wasn't until we moved here to Kentucky that my son, who at the time he was like 8 years old, out of nowhere, he starts struggling in school as far as he can't seem to keep focus, and was struggling with some anger issues. So I took him into a therapist, the first therapist I had ever seen. And she brought up the fact that he was struggling maybe with some focus, different issues. I don't know about him, but I was like, well, when I read about it, I nailed like every single piece of it. I'm like, oh, I don't know about him, but this is me. So I opened my eyes that way. But then also my son was saying he was really struggling with anger, which I didn't have myself. I didn't, and my husband didn't. So
right.
Getting to work with her a little bit was helpful. She had a lot of insight. But surprising to me as a parent, she had more insight for me as the parent than she did our child or children. And that was hard to hear, but it was very important to hear as well.
Well, let's save your therapy experiences for later, because we want to we want to give a little bit, but then, we'll come back to it.
Pull it back.
So, okay. So how did you decide then, that you were going to go back to school, get a master's degree, stay focused, and become a therapist?
Yes. Well, part of that, it was finding that my focus was really poor. And at that time I'd started reading quite a bit, and I enjoyed reading, which was new to me because I didn't really have that as a young person. And then I ended up going and talking to someone, and then came across the ADHD, then actually decided to do some medication. I loved reading and studying, and I'd gone back to school and loved every minute of school. I couldn't get enough. My husband joked about that. I'm like, yeah, it was just so invigorating. I absolutely loved it. So I started studying, but and it's always difficult because, like you brought up, we're not going to bring up that part till the second part. Well, things happen in life, and I've been around the block a few times. I'm not one of the young ones. So other things came up for me, and then I decided to see a therapist myself. For me. It was something very out of the blue. It didn't fit the situation.
Wow.
And I can go into that a little bit, you're saying, but not talk about, we'll go into the afterwards.
Well, I think that's interesting of like how, you go to become a therapist, and I don't know, some programs, did your program require you to go to therapy as yourself or no?
Yeah, mine did not. They are requiring that now, which I think is an incredible plan.
Yes. And that was ours too. I don't think they required it. They definitely had, people available if we did need that, but it wasn't a requirement as it is now, which I think, of course, yes, it is important because there is a different level of insight, I think, that you get when you're, you have someone who's solely focused on you for 50 minutes, right?
Oh, yes. Well, it makes you look at your own pieces.
Well, what kind of clients do you enjoy working with, or who do you, I mean, you really knock it out of the park at the Mindfulness Center. So, and we want to say that Bridgette's our Lexington person who heads up our Lexington office. So any of you listening who may know somebody who's in the Lexington area, or, we have people who even drive in from even further away to go to that Lexington office. So I know you do also spend some time here in our Louisville office as well. So you're kind of all over the place. But who do you like working with? Like, what clients really energize you?
The clients that energize me, definitely, I would say for me, clients who've actually accomplished a lot in many ways in their lives, their career. But then there's that piece with relationship in general. They get stuck on it. It could be relationship with parents or a sibling. It can be relationship even with themselves.
Yep.
It could be with their partner. But a huge part is you're seeing they're successful in so many areas, but this particular thing keeps them stuck.
Yes.
That
Yes.
they have a lot of energy to put towards something. That's really important. And they're willing to look at their parts, their pieces, because that's so important. Even within a couple, that's even more important.
Absolutely. I had a client once who she had told me, in her upbringing, she was so frustrated with her family of origin and her parents and stuff that she realized, like, I just haven't had the best example of a marriage or a relationship. And so I'm going to put all my efforts into being successful professionally, because she said, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to have a successful like marriage or, love relationship. And so she went, went to college, went on to law school, became a very successful lawyer. And throughout the years, her primary love relationships just kind of kept, failing, until she ended up in therapy with me in her like 40s. And she wanted to understand like why. And, part of this is, one, was it a self-fulfilling prophecy a little bit, that she thought like, I'm not going to be able to be good. I got to be good at one thing. So I'll be good in my profession. Right. But, and I find, and it's interesting because part of this was, she's like this really awesome person, and she just says she keeps choosing the wrong person. And the thing that I've been thinking about recently, and I'm curious what you think about this, is this idea oftentimes that fairly unhealthy people mentally choose pretty healthy people mentally, because it's almost like a challenge of like, can I not convert them, but can I control or manipulate them in a way, because they're so nice and they're so maybe a little bit naive, or that there's that element. So I don't know, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that, for sure. And I do think there is truth in that. I don't even know if it's so much manipulation as it might be more so I could really help this person, or I could really make the difference in this person's life. The tricky part is I do agree that we pick people and one may seem very healthy and the other not so much, but it's really more of one person seems very healthy, well, in one area.
Yes.
In fact, they might be incredible in one area, and then there's a certain spot where they're not doing as well and they don't see it. And the other person, they're not so good at the same area. We tend to pick people who are very different than us.
Yes.
Not always, but we tend to do that. Yes. And yeah, sometimes we just can't see our parts. We can't see our part in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But definitely it's not an equal thing. It's not 50-50.
Right. And then I this gal who, I'm thinking of, she would have said like, oh, I'm the problem. I keep choosing the wrong person. Right. And I think, there is something about, we do get into those patterns, and we're looking for a certain like person to recreate or whatever, learn what we need to learn from. But also, it's interesting of like how other people choose, her, let's say, of like, they're looking for that thing too, of like, whatever it is. And so it's just an interesting way of how like people come together in relationships, that they're each either looking for a different thing, the opposite of what they don't have, or, I don't know.
Yes. No, it's a very interesting thing, because when I'm working with clients, I typically don't go into long bouts of what was in your childhood or what was although I do think it does have value to know something about it. So typically in the beginning, I try to get just some dynamics, because we only get one family dynamic that we really grow up with. That's the only one we have. And it limits our ability to see, okay, well, what else is out there? What would I like?
Exactly. Well, the one question I love asking is like, if they're coming in and, they're having issues with their partner, is like, does your partner remind you of your mom or your dad? Like, And, sometimes they'll be like, neither, right? Or they'll be like, oh, it definitely reminds me of, my mom or whatever. And or there's elements of like, this is the thing that, my dad used to do that drove me crazy that now my partner's doing that drives me crazy. Or
yes.
whatever, so.
Yes, it is. I like to go under those same lines too. I don't think I've ever asked it that way, but I like the way that you do it. Just like asking that, because I do. There's a lot to gain in that, in noticing, well, what was it? Well, if you grow up and you're the one that solves all the issues in the family and you try to make everything better for mom or dad so no one's upset.
Yes.
You step into a relationship within the first few weeks quickly.
Yes.
Oh, well, I got this. I can do this. And you step in and take on that same dynamic that you may not have wanted in the beginning.
Exactly. But you're good at, because that's the role that you've been either put in. Yes. Yes. Oh, it's so fascinating. Well, Bridgette, I know you have some interesting things to tell us about your own personal journey with therapy. So we're going to wrap up part 1 here, and we're going to reconvene in part 2. So please join us in part 2 with Bridgette Allen.